Dr. Stephen Greer is now saying that the Las Vegas Cybertruck bomber is one of his whistleblowers that was poised to come out this month. In fact, within days, right? So this is kind of a breaking news that he's kind of taking ownership of this gentleman and saying that, yeah, he's one of his people that is going to come out, right? One of these whistleblowers. Now, in this video, we're going to dive into more about that and where that story came from initially. But first, I am going to play for you the clip. He went on Newsmax to talk about this. The clip really isn't anywhere. I have the full clip. And then I actually have the full interview from his Newsmax appearance that I'm going to put on our Clips channel. So that is not really anywhere unless you watched it live on cable. All right. It's not on the internet. So I'll put a link in the description. You can go check out that full interview. It's about 10 minutes long. All right. So, but first, let's dive into this video. All right. So stick around. I'm going to first play this clip of Dr. Stephen Greer on Newsmax talking about, right, the Las Vegas Cybertruck bomber. And then we're going to get into a bunch of other clips that I have to add more context, right, exactly where this story originated from, and parts of the Manifesto, right, which have been confirmed by the FBI. More on that later. But first, here's Dr. Stephen Greer on Newsmax. Take a look.
The Las Vegas suicide bomber. So he wrote this manifesto that they're trying to suppress like they do with everything else. But it sort of ebbs into this world. Is there any connection just between what is going to happen next week and what we saw in Las Vegas on New Year's Day?
Correct. There is. And again, that was sort of a psychological warfare operation by someone in special forces giving a heads up on this. It's not a coincidence it happened at the Trump building and that it was in a Cybertruck. He refers to gravitic propulsion systems. And that's what's going to be coming out because we have mastered gravity control for decades. And this is why many of the crap people see that they think is alien.
And he wrote about that in the manifesto. Just a final question.
All right. So Dr. Stephen Greer is saying that the Las Vegas Cybertruck bomber, right, and this subsequent manifesto that was put out, right, on the Sean Ryan show, which we'll get to here in a second, he's saying that, you know, this is it. This is legit. This is one of his whistleblowers that was going to come out. Now, where did that story come from, right? When did he say that these whistleblowers were going to come out? Well, back in December, a podcast was released on Superfly, which is hosted by former SNL cast members Dana Carvey and David Spade, which, by the way, I'm huge fans of. It's a great podcast. But, yeah, that news was dropped on that show. So let's play that clip, and then we'll come back to even more.
I just go back to the beginning for a second, and we can walk our way through, because the first thing you said, well, just kind of blew my mind. You know, a rogue organization, military in nature, probably with corporate entities, is putting these things in the air to create distrust, to create a little bit of panic for some reason we don't know. And you personally talked to you'd call him a whistleblower, right? Who within 30 days, if this is a movie, because it feels like a science fiction movie, obviously it's real.
Yeah, it does.
But that would seem like that gentleman's life he should be very careful. And also, within 30 days, this will be in a congressional hearing or just go to the media?
God, no. Let me tell you how this is going to happen.
See videos or people?
Yes. He's releasing. Now, remember, he's been operational about 15 months ago. He took me in his helicopter over these classified sites and exactly over the opening of one of the underground bases. I have that footage. We have it. I provided it to the Senate Intelligence Committee pretty quickly. About 3 weeks later, I was almost killed in a terrible accident and have since recovered. But no, this is deadly serious stuff. And and of course, he and his whole family are at tremendous risk. They know the risk, but these are big boys. I mean, they're very way up there with special operations. They've all been either Green Beret, Delta Force, those guys. And so, you know, these are not just your corporate shills, right? Dancing around in penny loafers and three-piece suits. So, so they know what they're doing. I've been asked to sort of put out to the public and to the incoming administration the details of this. So there's a heads up, as well as the existing administration and
we'll relay
Congress.
this.
Yeah, because right now everyone's going to be caught unawares. And this spate of drone and other strange sightings, it really is to induce fear, because one of the plans, if you remember, I don't know if you guys remember Wernher von Braun. He invented the rocket for Adolf Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So his spokeswoman for the last 5 years of his life, he was dying of liver cancer, is on our team, Carol Rosen. And she was the first woman executive in the aerospace industry. And back in 1974, Wernher von Braun said to her, what we're going to do, we're going to hoax an alien threat to consolidate sort of a totalitarian power around the world, because it'll be so frightening to people. They will give up their freedoms, and they will, et cetera, and so on. Sort of like the overreaction, but on a much larger scale, what happened with COVID and 9/11 and the Gulf of Tonkin and the Vietnam War. So that kind of operation has been going on for a very long time. This is the granddaddy of them. This is the one that people have feared.
Is this Blue Beam, or is that something else?
I do not have that code name. People talk about Project Blue Beam. I think that's just a name attached to this.
Now, we'll get to that manifesto here in just a second, but there's one more clip from this interview that I want you to see. Actually, two, but we'll get to the second one or the third one a little bit later. You'll see why. But right, he just stated in this first clip, right, that, right, former Green Berets, right, so he's kind of falling back on that because the Las Vegas Cybertruck bomber was a former Green Beret, right, and as you'll see when we get into his manifesto, which I have covered on a deep dive, I'll put a link in the description, you know, I don't know, is there something here, right? This is all kind of strange, and Dr. Greer coming out saying this stuff is very interesting because this former Green Beret that, you know, blew up his Cybertruck and allegedly took his own life, right? Dr. Greer is saying this is one of the guys. He's saying one of the guys, meaning there's more than one, right? More whistleblowers that are, again, poised to come out within days, because this interview was filmed back in December, right? So within days, these people are supposed to be coming out with hard evidence, right? So again, take a look at this second clip from this Superfly interview.
So there's a group of guys who I've known for about 18, 19 months who are senior intel and aerospace operatives out of some desert locations. I'm not going to mention where they are. I've been to them, where most of the R&D testing and operations dealing with so-called UFOs, UAPs occur. Now, this guy, the main guy, has 6 other black sites, as they're called, operational sites that are very secretive, and are these particular ones are ones that are rogue and been running illegally for a long time. He is coming forward in the next 30 days or so, maybe less, with the evidence and unmasking himself and some of his operators, special forces guys, about what's going on at these sites, and with evidence. In other words, he's been operational when they have targeted and downed extraterrestrial vehicles. He's been present when they've tested man-made UFOs, which are mostly what people see, that are essentially anti-gravity craft. And he's been present when there are a number of illegal operations that have occurred, including the incidental hitting and downing of civilian private planes that go up over this test area after a temporary flight restriction has gone up. So there are innocent people who have been murdered, and there's no evidence that they were hit. So these are serious guys. The main guy I've been dealing with, I know some of the others, has been in those operations for 29 years, since the 1995 period, but he was very young. At that time, he didn't know he was involved in an illegal and unsanctioned operation. He does now, and they're fed up with it, and they want to come forward. Now, in advance of that, because what he's going to bring forward would be, I understand if he can get this done in the next 3 weeks or so, would be the videos, the evidence, the proof, not only of the NHI, as they call them, non-human intelligence craft, and bodies and beings, but of the man-made ones, and also of some operations that involve the transport of humans in experimental operations from distressed areas around the world.
All right, so it sounds like this main whistleblower that's coming out that Dr. Stephen Greer is talking about is the same gentleman that flew him over this black site, right? And these other guys are sort of supporting characters, right? Like this Las Vegas Cybertruck bomber, right? Which, again, Dr. Greer provided no proof of that. He just saying it. I don't know, right? You decide for yourself. Here just to provide the context and the clips. So I just find this all interesting, right? So let's get to this manifesto, right? That, again, has been confirmed by the FBI to have come from this Cybertruck bomber, right? And this manifesto was sent to the Sean Ryan show.
Yeah, so we have confirmed that the document that he sent to the podcast, we know that he was the one that sent that document. That's correct.
All right, so as you can see there in a press conference, they do confirm, all right, this did come from that guy, which there was some, it was hit or miss there. They didn't know at first if it was coming from that guy in particular because of the things that were said in it, which I'm about to show you right now. Because, again, in my deep dive video that I did, you'll find the full manifesto read out. Again, link in the description if you want to go hear the whole manifesto. But this is just going to be certain parts that relate to UAP technology and the drones and anti-gravitic stuff, all of that, right? Propulsion system, whatever, right? This guy apparently having top secret sort of UAP clearance, right? So take a look.
So this email came in on December 31st at 10:42 a.m. That is Tuesday. What we have been seeing with drones, he puts that in quotes, he says drones, is the operational use of gravitic propulsion systems powered aircraft by most recently China and the East Coast, but throughout history, the U.S. Only we in China have this capability. Our OPSEN, that's Operations Center, our OPSEN location for this activity is in the box below. China has been launching them from the Atlantic from submarines for years, but this activity recently has picked up. As of now, it is just a show of force, and they are using it similar to how they use the balloon for SIGINT and ISR, which are also part of the integrated comms system. There are dozens of those balloons in the air at any given time. The so what is because of the speed and stealth of these unmanned aircraft. They are the most dangerous threat to national security that has ever existed. They basically have an unlimited payload capacity and can park it over the White House if they wanted. It's checkmate. Then he says, for vetting, my LinkedIn is Matt Berg or Matthew Livelsberger, an active duty 18 Zulu out of 110, that's 1st Battalion 10th Special Forces Group. My profile is public. I have an active TSSCI with UAP, USAP access.
What is USAP? Do you know what that is?
I don't know what that is. But I checked his credentials on LinkedIn. So that was the first thing I did. I went to his LinkedIn page. First thing I noticed was all of his bona fides were in place. He has all the UAS training from USASOC and everything else. And so I said, okay, at least the guy knows what he's talking about with drones. That was a very rough dig into the guy. But my issue was I couldn't validate or verify any of this information. And I told him that.
Now, let's get to one other clip before I get to the third Dr. Stephen Greer clip from the Superfly interview. There's one more clip that I want to play for you on the Patrick Bet-David podcast on Valuetainment, I think it's called, where a gentleman named Chase Hughes went on. And he is a 20-year Navy veteran who specializes in sort of psychological operations, interrogations, right? He's on a YouTube channel called The Behavioral Panel. I've covered him on this podcast before. And what he had to say is quite interesting, not only about psychological operations, but also listen to what he says about Dr. Stephen Greer. Now, mind you, this podcast just came out yesterday.
We're always involved in PSYOPs all the time. And when I say PSYOPs, there's a part of the U.S. Army that's special operations, that's PSYOPs. And when we say PSYOPs here, we won't be referring to like this is the U.S. Army. We're talking about just general psychological operations here. But if you're seeing large-scale things happen, the first thing you want to look at is what's the timing of this event and what's the context of what's going on. And then right away, what is the information that's being suppressed and what's being forced out into the public? Like these passports that happened and the ID card that was found in this guy who burned in a Tesla. Like somehow this thing mysteriously
You're talking
survived.
about Matt Liversberger, who his Cybertruck exploded in front of the Trump Tower.
Yeah. So, like, what is information suppression and availability, and what's the timing of what's going on? Like, is there something else happening? So, like, is a political candidate about to transfer power, or is something going on somewhere else that this could be some kind of distraction for? So we just go back to the, like, if you learn magic and you get a magic kit when you're a kid and they teach you like, well, shake your hand over here. Let me just do this thing. It's very basic. I'm just going to do a big thing over here to draw people's attention away. So we tend to think like there's some highly advanced technology going on to harness the power of a psyop, but it's usually pretty simple.
So for you, Chase, the average person sees the drones. Oh, it's the drones going on. The average person sees, with the Cybertruck and the whole ID that you're talking about, and then Sean Ryan and his crew talking about that email. When the average person sees it, they look at it at face value. Here's what happened.
Yeah.
How do you view it when you see it?
The first thing I'm looking at is what's the incentive here? Is there somebody that's going to gain from this being public or this being exposed to the public? And if you just look at the last few years, anything that we want to normalize to the public, we start out small. So we start out with these Freedom of Information Act releases like UAPs, drones, UFOs, all this stuff. And then these whistleblowers will come forward and start going on podcasts and they've been on Joe Rogan. They've been all over the place. So it's starting like this massive amount of information flux.
We had a couple of those. We had one of the guys on as well. If you're talking about the UFO whistleblowers.
Yeah.
Interesting business model. Keep going.
And who was the guy that you just had on? I watched it on the plane on the way over here. Dr. What was his name?
Stephen Greer?
Stephen Greer.
Okay.
Most believable guy I've ever seen from a body language perspective. Like he is very believable. There's some guys that I think are less credible. But if you just look at this release of information, when I see the drones as a behavioral expert, I'm seeing this is a logical expansion of that narrative. This is just the next logical step in a normalization process. So we're normalizing these drones, and we're normalizing the aerial phenomenon, and then all of this stuff happening, we don't know what the end goal is. So if you're looking at a psyop, the end goal of all psyops is to modify or shape behavior of a crowd of people, a group of people.
Now, keeping that clip in mind, let me play this final clip from the Superfly interview, right? Because, according to Chase Hughes, he sees Dr. Stephen Greer as the most truthful, right? Who doesn't sort of, right, leave any ambiguity, or he leaves ambiguity, right? And he's not so certain of everything, and he's okay to say, I don't know. Well, I don't know if I would share that same opinion. Take a look at this.
Remember, Ben Rich told a member of my team before he died, and Ben Rich was the head of the famous Lockheed Skunk Works. He said, anything you can imagine, we've already done at the Lockheed Skunk Works. He said, not at Area 51. The real action is the Lockheed Skunk Works. It's in underground facilities. And he says, anything you've seen portrayed on Star Trek, we can do it, and we've done it. So now this.
Well, wait a minute. You can beam people? Because that seems like the coolest thing. Beam me down to a planet.
They do. Yeah, they do have technologies for what's called teleportation. Of course, in physics, if you look it up, it's happened with particles through the what's called entanglement.
Okay, so look, the truth is Ben Rich was former head of Lockheed Skunk Works, and he has said some interesting things for sure. But we have the beam me up Scotty technology from Star Trek. Everything from Star Trek, we have that, right? We can create food out of nowhere, right? What's that machine that like just creates anything you ask it for? I mean, what are we talking about? Like, this is kind of insane, right? To be honest, I've never heard any of that stuff from Ben Rich, right? I have heard some interesting quotes from him, but not that. So Dr. Greer seems, in my opinion, very certain about everything he says. He leaves no ambiguity, right? He's involved in every step, knows all the answers, knows what's going on. So that's kind of an odd thing for Chase Hughes to say, in my opinion. But, who am I? He's a behavioral expert in psychological operations. I don't know. And he kind of, what he describes about psychological operations almost sounds like exactly what Dr. Stephen Greer is doing, right? So I don't know what's going on, to be honest with you. And I don't know if I believe him when he says he's never met him, because maybe he's never met, like, personally, but there's just no way he's never heard of him before, right? Because they have covered him on the behavioral panel, I believe. There's just no way you don't know about him, right? Because they've covered a lot of UFO stuff on their channel before. So I don't know. I find that odd. I don't know. Just odd. That's all I'm saying. You decide for yourself, right? Yeah, I don't know. This is all very interesting, right? Is this, we'll find out in days if what Dr. Stephen Greer is saying is true, because these people are supposed to come out now, right? Within days. We should know. We should have evidence. We should have these people coming out. Guess we'll just wait and find out. I'll hold my judgment till then. Am I a little suspicious? Yeah. But all right, I'm open-minded. I'll wait and see, right? Because there's a lot of predictions happening for right now, for the new year. Within days, weeks, there's a lot of things that are allegedly coming out. And what are people going to do when it doesn't happen? What are the excuses going to be, right? Because you can always fall back on, well, I was intimidated. There can always be an excuse of why the thing you predicted doesn't happen. But why give the prediction? Why say it? Why not just come out with it, right? Instead of talking about it. Why not just come out with the stuff, right? That's what I don't understand, right? Why tell us that? To prepare? Like, what's the point? Just come out with the information when you have it ready, instead of saying it's going to come out or saying you're going to, do this X, Y, or Z. Just put your money where your mouth is and leave it there. That way, if nothing happens, you don't look like a fool, right? So anyway, one last clip I'm going to share for you from that Newsmax interview here at the end. Take a look.
Dr. Greer, I'm interested to see what's really going on out there. We've got 10 days before the inauguration.
As soon as this drops and we get this from this team, we'll send it over to you.
All right. Dr. Stephen Greer, have a great weekend. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it, as always.
So, look, it sounds like he's going to, when that's available, he's going to be sending it to Newsmax and hopefully releasing it to the public. So I guess we'll find out, y'all. All right. We'll see you guys on tomorrow's video. Don't forget, if you want to see that full Dr. Greer interview, go to our Clips channel. I'll put a link in the description, and you can find the full interview there, which you're just not going to find on the internet. So if you want to see the full thing, go check it out there. All right, y'all. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.